I got really inspired thinking about like, what does it actually take to like open a franchise? Like, what qualifications do you need? How much funding do you need? Like, how much money do you need down to like be able to go forward with a loan? And so that's kind of what got my brain thinking in that direction.
And then Liz and I have talked a lot where, we say we're so lucky. Your program, that was the first time we got offered a resale.
Yes.
And look, in our scenario, we are very happy that we got a resale.
And then also you guys specializing in the franchise experience and like what it's like to actually go through with selecting a franchise.
Sticking to the plan of like, where you want to go and just like make sure that you stay consistent with that.
In this episode, we sit down with a couple, Liz and Dean, who were actually able to purchase a franchise resale doing about $2 million in annual sales when they acquired it. The business that's about 15 years old. Now, the cool part is that Liz and Dean were our clients at Franchise Empire. Our team actually went out and found that opportunity for them, and we helped coach them through the process. So we're going to dive into their story a bit of, number one, why they were even looking at franchise resales. Actually, Dean previously, and at the time, was an owner of some Jersey Mike's franchise locations with a business partner. But we're going to talk about their journey of working with multiple franchise brokers over about a year period and just being disappointed overall in the progress that they were making, which led them to ultimately engaging with us. And then, what happened from there, how they navigated the process of buying a resale, what they were doing now, and now that they stepped into a 15-year-old business, and really how you can learn from their journey. So this is actually the first Franchise Empire Show podcast we've done with a client of ours, but we want to share more and more stories of, franchise owners who are building their empire. So more to come, and definitely let us know if you like this style of episode. Now, if you are wanting to buy a franchise in the next 12 months, you should check out my free franchise masterclass at franchiseempire.com/masterclass. And if you want to work with me and my team on finding or buying a franchise or resale business, then you can go to franchiseempire.com/check territory. And you can schedule a free call so that we can start the process of seeing what's available in your area. The link is also in the description below. So with that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. All right. So I'm here with Liz and Dean. Really good to see you guys again. It's been a while. So just for context, introduce yourself. Like who are you guys, and what do you do?
Yeah. Sure. So my name's Liz. I have a degree in psychology. Most of my experience is in the restaurant world, so specifically working at Jersey Mike's. I worked there for about 10 years on and off from like the time I graduated high school up until earlier this year. And my experience there is in basically every role you can think of, starting from a crew member to shift lead, assistant manager, general manager, training director, director of development. And so I feel like I got to experience, I guess, the customer facing side of the business, but then also the back end of like financials and business planning. And I think that's kind of what geared me towards entrepreneurship and wanting to own something for myself. So that's kind of what led me to my journey of finding this program.
Yeah, similar story for me. Jersey Mike's for 12 years. Liz and I met there at Jersey Mike's back in college, and kind of just stuck it out. We moved to LA, and we're pursuing different paths of what we wanted to do long term, and kind of found ourselves getting into business, and now we're engaged and getting married this year, so it's a big year. yeah
Busy year.
So new business, marriage, all that good stuff, kind of coming to a point. So yeah,
it's a lot. It's an exciting time, and it's cool to, it's cool to be in a similar business or be able to work with your spouse. Some people can't handle it, but I found that at least, my wife's an entrepreneur as well. So just being able to, it's like we're always talking about business. Do you guys find that to be true, or like?
Yeah.
It's funny because we went to a conference before we bought the business. We got to go and just, network and talk to other franchisees and stuff. And like the first conversation that we've had with somebody was like, make sure you define your roles. You do not want to, stay in your lane. You don't let your relationship get involved. And we've heard that as a common denominator from a lot of people. And it makes sense. It's just so that way you can kind of bridge a line of like, hey, this is business. This is my thing. I don't,
Mhm.
let's not take this stuff home and argue about little details of different things. And
Yes.
fortunately for us, we work really well together. So we haven't had any
Mhm.
issues, but definitely I can see that happening for people that, have a strong opinion and they want
Mhm.
to kind of go back and forth and do all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, we come home, we talk about stuff all the time, but that's kind of why it's fun. It's like our little baby that we get to develop and strategize and execute on all these different levels. So I think that's
Yes.
one of the things I do like about it.
Yeah, that does make it fun. And I think we have a lot of similar goals and values. So
Yeah.
it's fun to kind of work on it together and achieve our goals.
Yeah. Cool. So can you talk about a little bit what businesses you guys are in currently?
Yeah, so we purchased a resale franchise with CertaPro Painters, which is one of the biggest painting franchises in North America. So I didn't think, yeah, going into looking at franchises, I kind of kept the door open to all different kinds of industries. Like I was looking at pest control, pet grooming, you name it, floor installation. I mean, there was many options to choose from, and paint was probably at the bottom of the list. So I kind of, when that was presented to me by Kevin and Krista, I already put that at the bottom of the 9 franchises that were presented to me. But then once we started doing validation, it became more and more clear that it was going to check the boxes, and it
Hmm.
became less about what the day to day is like and what goals do we want to achieve and what is
Hmm.
this going to provide for us. So I think
Hmm.
that's what helped us get clarity.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Go ahead, Dean.
Yeah. So I don't know if I updated you on this or not, but yeah, I officially sold my interest of my Jersey Mikes. So
Oh,
I'm
you
full
did.
time. Yeah, so I'm full time now with CertaPro with Liz. So
Oh, congrats.
yeah, thanks, man. So it's been a huge change for me going from food service my whole life into doing this too. So yeah, it's been cool. So right now it's just CertaPro. That's our main
Mhm.
thing.
Nice. I think that probably from my perspective, I think a wise move because from my experience and all of the communications with you guys, like you guys work great together in terms of just kind of like the yin and yang, and
Yeah.
so I've seen a lot of couples be successful in business when they do have those clear kind of roles and just partnerships. So that's awesome. Sweet. Well, I'm
Yeah.
even more excited now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So okay, so talk to me a little bit about the beginning because geez, it's been I don't know when did you guys start working with us? Like has it been about a
About a
year
year
now?
ago. Yeah. So yeah, it was around the time that Dean opened his second Jersey Mike's. I think that's when I started getting in the headspace of this is really cool because Dean was able to partner with the owners that we worked at Jersey Mike's for. And so he opened store number one, which was a resale that they took over together. And then they opened store number two as a brand new location. The year mark just passed like a week ago. So we were
hmm
kind of like laughing about that. But I think during that grand opening, I got really inspired thinking about like what does it actually take to like open a franchise? Like what qualifications do you need? How much funding do you need? Like how much money do you need down to like be able to, go forward with a loan? And so that's kind of what got my brain thinking in that direction. And then I started getting, I don't know, I guess like I don't know if you would describe it as the corporate handcuffs, but just kind of feeling trapped. You know what I mean? Like I felt like we had the skill set. I didn't know if we could qualify financially, so that's when I started opening the door of like what will it take for us to do this for ourselves?
Yeah, interesting. And so, okay, so that's a pretty good kind of synopsis into kind of like what was triggering it. And I think there's a lot of people that kind of feel that way. I guess, Dean, you were an owner, right? So that's a little bit of a different situation than like
hmm
what Liz was in. But I think a lot of people can relate in that they're just like, huh, I'd really like to do this for myself. And I remember the first time of when I was working the bank, I was like 20 years old and there was a tropical smoothie across the street. And I remember going into the tropical smoothie and there was this young guy, he worked in defense contracting because I grew up in Virginia. And he would wear like He'd be in like his suit in the store for just a little bit, but he had like a manager and stuff. And I'm like, man, that guy looks so young. He probably isn't over 30 or maybe early 30s. How does he own a store like this? And what would that be like? And could I ever do that someday? So I definitely can relate to that. But so walk me through, like, you came to kind of reach out to us
Mhm.
in kind of midway through your journey. I guess what
Yeah.
what was going on and where were you in the process overall, that kind of made you want to like reach out and I guess like get additional support?
So you guys were my fourth and final franchise broker that I worked with. So it was kind of it was actually like, so I think I joined the program end of last summer, and it was probably a year before that. So actually shortly after he took over his first store and kind of stepped into business ownership, where I was like, oh, I wonder what other franchises are out there. Cause we love Jersey Mike's. We had worked there, for 10 years or so. And I think we kind of were familiar with the franchise world, and we kind of, especially Dean, was like following the path of like just making it happen with Jersey Mike's. And I think that's when I started thinking, well, if we have restaurant experience, we could probably apply that to something else. So I wonder what else is out there. So that's what triggered that journey. And then I worked with my first franchise broker. I can't even remember where I found him, but I just Googled like franchises, and then I ended up with the franchise broker. I thought I was actually contacting a franchise directly, and then I ended up with him. He was really nice, but he sent me 3 different industries, and they were all weird. It was like, well, I hope this doesn't sound weird for people that have these franchises, but one was like mobile drug testing or something like that. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do that. One was pest control. I was like, I don't really want to do that. And the other one was like a pet hotel, which required a lot of capital. And I was like, okay, I think I'm like not really ready for this. So put that on the back burner, never talked to him again. I revisited it. I found another girl. She was also really nice. She presented me some brands, and then all of them were startups that were within my budget. But then I started looking at the FDD and like looking at financials, and then I had I had someone help me look at like a deeper dive of like what the financials actually look like, and the average revenue was like for people with 4 or more units. So when I did the math on how much capital I would need to have 4 units of that franchise, I was like, okay, no, this isn't going to make sense. And then I started getting discouraged again. And then I had a conversation with her about it. And I was like, I really want to replace my income within 2 years' time. And she's like, okay, well, you have to set realistic expectations, all this stuff. And I didn't really like that answer. So then I put that on the back burner. Let me just keep doing my job. So then the third time, I found another woman. I think I reached out direct about a franchise, and then I got paired with her. She was nice. Same thing. She was actually pitching me stuff that was out of my budget and more stuff that I wasn't comfortable, I guess, investing in. And she was like, I told her like, I want something more in my budget. I don't want to put all this money at stake right now. And then she was like, well, you're not going to get a good return on all that stuff. And again, I just didn't really like her answer. I was just like, it was kind of like this friction of trying to understand what, like if my options were being limited or if I actually wasn't qualified to do something like this.
Mm.
So that's when I started like trying to educate myself. And I went on YouTube. I found your page because if you type in anything franchise related, it's your face all over everything. So I didn't even know that you had like a franchise broker affiliation or anything like that. I thought you were just educating us on stuff. And then so during my commutes, I would be listening to your YouTube videos and educating myself, learning about validation, all this stuff. And then I kind of realized it's a similar journey for everyone, kind of going through the validation process. I kind of thought, because I was familiar with how our old owners at Jersey Mike's went through their process of finding Jersey Mike's. And I thought that was Jersey Mike's specific. Like you have to do a validation call. You have to go to Discovery Day. I was like, oh, that's really cool that Jersey Mike's does that. But then when I started educating myself, I realized from your videos, that's what you're supposed to do. That's like, you know, so then I realized,
Standard, yeah.
yeah. So then that's when I realized, okay, so it's up to me to make educated decisions on how to get the right franchise and not just sign up for something that someone told me is a good idea.
Hey, so I recently put together a list of 5 low-cost franchises that make $1 million or more. If you want to see that list, then click the link below in the description or go to franchiseempire.com/low cost. Let's get back to the episode.
Yeah.
So then that's where I found.
Well, I'll say like up until that point, because I remember Liz was waking up at like, it was like 5:45, 6 in the morning, and then having like 6:30 a.m. like meetings with brokers, so that way she can do it in time before work started. And she was fitting all this in. And I was listening to these conversations, and I'd peek in every once in a while. And the main takeaway that we were getting from each of those brokers was that it felt very just surface level, and they weren't really listening to like what the main reason why she was pursuing this business. And
Mm.
they would give her things like, the list of things that were like non-negotiables for us, they were still presenting them as like, well, I think this might work. And they were trying to like
They were trying to like push me into something that wasn't going to
they were
match
trying to force
my
a business
values.
into
Like,
our
for
life.
example,
Yeah.
I think one of the things was I said, I want work-life balance. I want something with standard business hours. I don't want to have to work nights and weekends. And one of the things that was pitched by another broker was like a retirement or estate thing that happens on Saturdays and Sundays. And they're like, yeah, but once you train a manager, you won't have to do it. I'm like, they're going to be calling me with questions. Like, what? That's not going to match. Like, no, that's like exactly what I told you I don't want to do.
Yeah. So I
So it was
think,
a lot of that of like,
and it was just, okay, that's just one example, but there were so many things like it has to be scalable. And then we're getting things that were like owner operated one man shows. And we're like, just whenever we would have those conversations with the broker, like Liz and I would talk offline, and we're like, I don't know if this person's really listening. Like, let's look for another one until we finally find someone who kind of lines up. Right. And that's kind of where, this conversation starts. We meet you guys.
yeah.
Right?
And so then I found on your YouTube videos, you had like the 10-step program or the 5-step program.
The 7-step. Yeah.
Yeah, the 7-step. The 7-step.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, let me just download this. And then I get the call, and then I was like, oh, okay, like, let's see what this is. And then that's when I told Dean, I'm like, I'm going to invest in this program from this guy that I found on YouTube. And he was like, what do you mean? You're going to... And I was like, no, I feel like I need to invest in this. Like, I feel like I'm not, like, this is going to help me get to my goal faster than because I can do the research on my own, but I feel like this will help me get to where I'm going faster. Yep. And so that's when I connected. So that's when I went forward. You had like the guarantee program of like, if it doesn't work out, and I was like, okay, let me just see what this is about. And then a big draw for me was one, getting connected with the franchise brokers, but then also having the weekly call, which I think was super helpful for me because you get the actual, you get to listen into actual questions for stuff that you don't think about. Like there were so many questions on those. I was attending those calls for about, I think 3 months before actually must have been about 6 months until I closed on the business. And that's when I got really busy and I couldn't really like join anymore. But there were so many good takeaways of just like random information that you guys were giving us of like, hey, these are things that you guys should be thinking about, like coming prepared with the talking points for us.
Yeah.
But then also hearing questions and comments from other either new franchisees or people who had been in their business for a couple years coming in with takeaways. And then also the Facebook group. So many good takeaways on there. So I think that added a lot of value for me. And it's just night and day when I kind of compare to like I probably could have found a franchise that checked the boxes if I went with a different franchise broker, but that would have been me carrying all the weight on my back of having to teach myself how to do everything. So it would have been a much longer path.
Yeah. And I'll say like emotionally, I think it felt very comforting knowing that like we always had someone, like a team that could kind of help us talk through different, scenarios. And obviously like, you guys weren't telling us what to do, but it was more of like, hey, so like, this is what we learned. And just us kind of going through the exercise of communicating those things, it kind of just helps us rationalize and like, I don't know, put a finger on kind of like what we want to do and guide us in that direction. And I thought that was really, really valuable, which I never thought we necessarily needed. And looking back, like, I remember we were doing so many validation calls. We probably did like between all the different brands, like, I don't know, 100
maybe
tons.
Yeah.
But, and I remember like towards like halfway and onwards, I actually was like having fun. Like I couldn't wait to have a validation call with all these different brands because it just like, it made my, understanding of franchises like so much clearer. And I was like, you know what? This isn't that hard. It's really just like, you got to crack the truth. And like, the truth is really just what is the reality of this business. And then the more and more people you talk to, the more and more clear it becomes. And you kind of, I don't know, it's hard to say because it's intangible, but I remember like, it was just like you added one more piece to that puzzle. And then you kind of look back and you're like, oh my God, I totally understand this now. Mm-hmm. And there were some brands that we were like locked in on. I don't know if you remember, but we were like, oh yeah, I think this is it. It was a startup and all this stuff. And then as we kind of talk to people, we realize like, oh shoot, like this is not at all what we want to do. And
Yeah.
then now we're painting, which is
Yeah.
never what we
No,
want.
we're painting.
But it
Yeah.
lined up with where our goals were so much better. And I really feel like we got blessed with that. And then Liz and I have talked a lot where, we say we're so lucky because your program, I mean, that was the first time we got offered a resale.
Yes.
And look, in our scenario, we are very happy that we got a resale as opposed
like
to a
looking
startup,
back,
so.
we were pretty confident that we wanted to do a startup so we could create our own reputation and do all that stuff and build our own thing. But wow, we look back and we're like, we're really lucky that we got a business that's already in operation for 16 years,
Yeah.
has the brand reputation, has the reviews, has the repeat customers. I mean, so much of our business is repeat customers. So
Yeah.
it's really easy for us to walk in and be like, don't worry, change of ownership, but all the crews are still here. Like that's a huge selling point for us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, we couldn't be more excited about that because not one of the other franchise brokers offered us any resales. And I don't know if that has something to do with like the pay
No.
structure on that, or I don't know.
No, I don't, yeah. Or just their outreach or
their
whatever.
network of like what's available to them. But yeah.
Did we even mention it as like even a potentiality, like or it was just always the conversation never even went there as a topic? Like,
well, you know what? This actually might have been our fault, but during that time, I don't think we were interested in resales per se. But I remember Kevin saying, "Hey guys, I have a resale that kind of aligns with what you're looking to do." And I remember us being like,
yeah,
I think
we were
so.
kind of resistant.
And then he was like, "No, I think you should look at it." And then we did. And I remember it was like on the sideline for quite a while until we started to like, I mean, it took us a while to accept the idea of it.
Yeah.
Which is funny. But I remember because one of the things that was at that time a non-negotiable was the area.
Like our business has to be where we live.
We didn't want to
we
go.
don't want to be
commute.
in a different territory.
But
so now we're commuting 25 minutes, but we have plans to move to our territory now.
Yeah.
So
but
maybe next year.
But yeah, so I think, but again, like the thing I liked about it was he was very much about like, I think this is kind of exactly what you're looking for. And like was kind of guiding us to like, really like, look at this.
I like that he opened the door to options that were outside of, I guess, our criteria, but he had reason to back it up.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that about Kevin and Krista.
Yep.
And giving us those options because it wasn't just like a funnel of like, okay, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. It was like, hey, I know this isn't something that you were specifically interested in. I know you wanted to be in your area, but I think you guys should consider this resale because it's a good opportunity and it's close enough. So it's ironic that that's the one that we ended up moving forward with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's a good point because it's definitely a balance between like, someone may go, "Ooh, I definitely don't want to do this," but like kind of opening the mind up a little bit. And it sounded like you had that experience before, but there wasn't necessarily the kind of the justification or reasoning that at least made sense. And I think from my experience, it's easier to accept or be open to the reasoning if there's a really solid layer of trust. And so I think it could literally, two people could be saying the same exact thing in the same way, but if you're feeling like the relationship is built on trust in one way, you're willing to accept it. And if you're doubting the trust on the other side, you're like, I don't know. So I'm curious, like at any point did it feel like, because some people are like, I don't want to be sold a franchise, right? And we try to be really clear of like, we're not trying to sell anyone a franchise. We definitely will sell you on joining the program because we feel that is the best way to go about it. But what did you feel in the did you feel like you were being like sold or convinced or like your arm twisted like during the process?
No. Not at all. No. And it's funny you say that because I felt like that was the case with the other 3 brokers I worked with, even though they were 2 out of the 3 were very likable. And I get what it is. It's kind of like, I kind of compare it to working with a realtor of like having a good realtor is someone who is ready for you when you're ready and there's no pressure versus someone who's like, what do I need to do? What is it going to take for this person to close on a home in the next month? And I'm going to go above and beyond to make sure that I find them something that, like kind of giving that pressure. So when I was working with Kevin and Krista, I felt like the ball was very much in my court of like, hey, this is the stuff that's available within your criteria. Take a look. Let's process what you think and let's reassess if we need to open up any criteria, if we need to cast a wider net. So I felt like the power was in my court.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad that was the experience overall. So as you okay, so you got introduced to the resale, right?
Mhm.
And then it's like resales are way more complicated to buy
Mm-hmm.
than a new franchise. I mean, it's much harder the resale process, and we tell that to people openly. Um, so what was that process like then going, okay, now we're looking at a resale. How do we go about doing this due diligence and what do I do and what do I look for? And like walk me through kind of like what that process was like.
Um, I think that something that was really helpful to me was the reassurance that I got from you and the team that we won't be able to qualify for a loan on a business that isn't successful. Because I think that there's a lot of um, fear going into a resale of like, what if I make like, I'm obviously paying more for a business that's in operation versus doing a startup. So what if this fails? What if they're hiding something from me? And then just getting the
Mm-hmm.
reassurance of like how the SBA loan works and how you physically won't qualify for this loan if it's not a profitable business and if you can't afford to do this. So I think that was huge for me. And then also getting connected. So the broker that what is it, mortgage broker? No, SBA lender that you guys connected me with, Glenn from Huntington. We interviewed our own lenders too, just to do our due diligence, and we ended up moving
Yeah.
forward with him. He
Yep.
was super. Not only did we get the best, I guess rate, well, not necessarily just rate, but like the best experience and like I guess the best option for funding.
Mm-hmm.
He spent a lot of time with us and just really did a good job of educating us on how everything works. It wasn't just like a transactional call of like, okay, we're going to collect your information on this and you're going to get passed to this person, passed to this person. He spent a lot of time, nights and weekends on the phone with us, helping us understand what we were getting into. So I found that through you guys.
Yep.
Yeah. Were you gonna add anything, Dean? You seem like you wanted to say something.
No, that's pretty much. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I remember the SBA was definitely the biggest hurdle for us. That just took a while to get, but I mean, it was actually pretty smooth, all things considered. But
Yeah.
I
I
think,
think also the program prepared me for getting my business entity set up in time because I know that that's something that there's just so, oh my gosh, I think back to like January and February before we closed on the loan. And man, that was a stressful time, like trying to align everything and just the days pass so quickly and you're trying to get stuff done while you're also trying to work full time.
mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, that was stressful. But I think your program did a great job of preparing us for all the steps that we need to take. And make sure that we can close our loan on time because I would have had to figure that all out on my own.
Yeah, yeah. There's so there are a lot of steps, and especially again with the resale, it's just you have to transfer vendor accounts and all these different
Yeah.
things over and take over the payroll of the people. So it's definitely much more complex. But obviously, there's pros to it because you guys took over a business that was a fairly high performing business too. I mean, we were talking before. There's some opportunities for improvement, but the business you bought was producing some pretty significant numbers. And it'd been around for what 10 years, 15 years, what was it?
Yeah,
16 years.
16.
16 years. Wow, that's
Mhm.
crazy. I'm curious what would so like right now we're actually our businesses, or the franchise empire business is continuing to evolve and evolve at a quicker pace. And so now we kind of have a couple different paths for people that we work with. And there's people who are they're hesitant to make an investment. They're like, "What? I could work with a broker for free. Like why would I pay any money to like work with you guys?" And for people that just want to be introduced to a broker, will do that. They won't get obviously anything from the system or any of that stuff. But what I mean, and I know that you guys were a little bit hesitant about that towards the beginning. So what would you say to someone that has that concern?
I would say if you want to do it yourself and find your own franchise broker, you can follow that path. You will be limiting your options, and you have to reframe it as an investment into getting the network and getting to your goal faster than if you do it on your own. because they could follow what I did originally and just keep going through franchise brokers until you think you're confident on someone that knows what they're talking about, and prevent maybe they could present you with the right opportunity. But beyond that, just having the network, and then also you guys specializing in the franchise experience and like what it's like to actually go through with selecting a franchise, not just like matching people with the franchise, but like what are the steps and emotions that you're going through, and having the network on the Facebook page and on the weekly call to just ask simple questions, ask more complex questions, stuff that I think, in my opinion, a traditional franchise broker who just focuses on the sale, I don't know if they would have access to those resources.
Mm.
I don't know if they have the network of people who have been happy with other franchises that they've purchased, specific questions about closing on a loan, for example. So I think it's more an investment into the network,
Yeah.
and then people who are actually invested in your success as opposed to closing a deal.
Yeah, I was gonna say for me, like the Q&A calls were really, really helpful because, and then a way that I learn typically is like through osmosis. So like I like to just expose myself to stuff until I like kind of learn what I don't know. And I would say like even if someone's not 100% ready to make a purchase right away, like I think just like sitting in on those Q&As and like hearing about the different hurdles everyone's going through, just like whether that be funding or finding the right brand or all the other million things that can come up when searching
Mhm.
for a business. I think it's good to like just hear those things, because if it's just you, you're pretty limited on what you know. And I think the more you expose to other people that have the same mindset and they're going the same direction that you're going, it gets you there faster and more confidently. And I
Mhm.
think when we were going through it, I was looking forward to just like, throwing out whatever situation that we were in, just to kind of put it on you and say, hey, what do you think? And then you kind of give me your 2 cents and kind of redirect it towards us, and then we would kind of come to our own kind of thing. And I think that's super valuable. And it definitely made us feel more confident moving forward with this, because we moved pretty quick. I mean, once we found everything, it was pretty
Yeah.
smooth for us. So, but we felt very confident moving forward because we felt like we uncovered all of those rocks before, we
Mhm.
knew what we didn't know before it was too late, kind of thing.
Yeah, it made me really. I was really excited to hear when you guys had said, "Hey, we're going to pursue this resale," and I just thought, man, that's awesome. I get really excited about those situations because I know the potential, especially the fact that the business that you chose with the brand you chose. I mean, Serta is one of the more established ones. I've heard some really positive things from owners in the past around kind of some of the resources that they give them access to. It's very unique
Mm,
from some other franchisors, and unfortunately, there are some franchisors out there that their support is terrible. When you talk to franchisees, they're like, "No, I would not do this again. No, I'm not getting the support or resources or access or whatever it is." So it just makes it makes me really nervous because they're so. I say that about out of the 4,000 franchises, probably about 80% of them are probably pretty bad.
yeah.
I
And
believe it.
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I said I believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. But it's interesting, Dean, you said something earlier around like how much you were learning through the process. And what's interesting is that like you were a franchise owner, like you owned the Jersey Mike's, and it's interesting because we're having now more and more entrepreneurs starting to work with us, and people that either were franchise owners and sold their business and they're like, "Hey, I'm ready for the next thing," or number two is they have a franchise and now they're pretty hands off with it and they're like, "Hey, we want to diversify and get another one. Can you help us?" And so sometimes the team has been like, "Oh, well, they don't need the program. We could just, work with them in the broker only." And I'm like, I wouldn't be so quick because I didn't know, like when I bought my franchise and even after selling it, I didn't know a lot of the stuff that was in the program and how to do due diligence and just kind of how to go through the process. So, like, Dean, do you want to just hit on that a little bit more or just kind of like what, like,
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think just in business in general, I think the greatest asset is building a network of people. So like even with like our situation now with CertaPro, we've been fortunate enough to like build really close relationships to some high top performing franchisees. And I think, with your program, like we even met a couple CertaPro franchisees through your program. Like Kevin and Krista, like Facebook messaged them, linked us up. We got to like validate with them. We ended up meeting them at the conference. It's cool. And I think there's a lot of value in that because, I guess you learn more from, I think, people who have done the same thing that you're doing, that have done it before you. And like, instead of me trying to reinvent the path and the wheel and all that stuff, you can kind of skip a few chapters by just knowing the right people who are doing those things and just learning from them. So we try to choose our mentors very wisely, and we don't listen to everyone. We don't listen to a few select people. Um, so yeah, so I mean, going through this, like I never, at least for me personally, I never feel like I'm too good to learn anything new, right? So sure, there may be things that people may know, but there's probably some things that they don't know, and I think you don't want to limit yourself to just knowing what you know. You always want to kind of keep your mind open and
Yep.
meet new people, hear other questions, experiences that people are going through. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, cool. Now that you guys have been operating the business, I think you said 4 months now.
4 months, yeah.
Yep.
4 months now. What's the biggest thing that you've learned so far now, operating the business?
Oh man, I learned a
Uh,
lot. I know that pain is very different than sandwiches. uh, let's see. Well, I know. Okay, I don't know if this is like the right answer or what, but I know with like resales, it's really important for us. Like this is the second time that we've done a resale, and something that I think is important is like sticking to the plan of like where you want to go, and just like make sure that you stay consistent with that. Because like the first time around, I was like on the mindset of like we need to retain and keep things going and just don't screw it up. And you kind of are like, I guess, I don't know, you're holding yourself back because you're kind of stuck with whatever that culture, whatever that direction of that business is. Whereas like with this time, we're very much with like, okay, what are our core values? Like, who are we? Why are we doing this business? And then honestly, consistently telling ourselves why we're doing this. Cause there's hard days, there's some definitely hard days, especially going from something that we've done for so long into something completely brand new. So I think for me personally, just going back to like the why behind it, staying true to the vision, and then being consistent, and then I think the rest kind of will follow suit. Because if you get lost, that's when things get kind of hairy. So yeah, so I mean, we're right in the middle of it. We have the plan. Now we're in like the part of the execution of like, how do we get there, right? Because we know where we want to go, but now we got to build the team,
Yep.
and we got to make those, execute on whether it be hard decisions or hard work or what, and then get the straightest path to get there. I think that's kind of, for
Yeah.
me, the biggest learning.
Yeah. I think going off of that too, just not being afraid to make sure everyone on the team is the right person for the team, because everybody has their goals and their strengths and weaknesses. And I think for me, like, I think going into this, especially like as a resale and like inheriting a team, I think I've been in the first few months being a bit over accommodating to make sure I'm not, changing the way people are used to working. Just, I kind of took the path of just humbly sitting in the corner of like, I'm just going to observe and like let you guys do your thing. I'll come in later. And I think looking back, we could have been a little bit more open about our feelings and stuff that we want to change, or maybe we did the timing right. But I think now, a few months in, as we're starting to implement our changes, we're experiencing a bit more friction from the team of like, but we've always done it this way. And so I think looking back, I wish I was a little bit more, I guess, forthcoming about, hey, like, we're probably going to have some changes coming in the future. So be aware of that. And then consider, this is where we want to go. You're either on board or you're not. And we respect it either way. But just kind of making it clear to people that this is going to be a different business.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing, just alluding to my other point earlier, is that like, I think don't be afraid to ask for help and be like honest with the situations that you're in, because like I think I've seen other businesses where people will try to cover up things that are like wrong, or they'll like try to be like ignore the problems kind of thing. And
Mm,
they kind of extend their issues for quite a while. But if you just accept the fact that like, oh, I need to improve here,
Mhm.
and then like ask for people to identify blind spots for you, and then like
Mhm.
do everything you can to fix that as soon as possible, that's really kind of what leads to success. And I think that's what kind of separates people who do this well and who don't. So
Yeah.
like for us, I think something that we've done a good job is like, again, reaching out to the people who do this well, and then
Mhm.
ask them like, and we, I know we have like almost daily calls at this point, but they're really been really cool with us. But they're really guiding us into like, oh, we've been there. It took me a year and a half to get out of this. The way that if I were to do it again, I'd do this and this, and
Yeah.
we kind of take that. We don't, do exactly what they say, but it's like we take a couple ideas and we kind of build it into our way, and then we feel good about that decision and we move forward with it. And then that way we're not just dealing with stuff, right? We're being proactive and making
Yeah.
decisions, so that way um, we have full control. And I think that's something that I've learned is also really important.
Yeah.
Is that just you got to ask for help, get those
Mhm.
mentors, and then learn from people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, so if you want to learn the right way to own a money making franchise without putting your family at risk financially, then check out our free masterclass at franchiseempire.com/masterclass. Let's get back to the episode. It's so important. I know I've been, my goodness, invested in so many programs and hired coaches and done all sorts of things to just try to keep leveling up, right? Because it's like there are
Yeah.
people ahead of you that typically have figured it out, especially in a franchise system. I mean, that's one of the biggest benefits, right? Is that there's all these other owners who are have done it longer or more successful, or that can provide insight. Sometimes it shocks me when I hear like a franchisee say, "Yeah, we're struggling." I'm like, "Have you talked to the franchisor?" No. Have you talked to other top performing franchisees? No. Who have you been talking to? The other franchisees who are struggling. I'm like, "No." I'm like, "That's the worst people to talk to."
Right.
And they're
Yeah.
like, "Really? Why?" I'm like, "You have to cut them off. You can't talk to any other struggling franchisees." And it's like, no, because you got to get in the mindset of what the successful people are doing.
Right.
And
That's
it's
right.
kind of like counterintuitive, I guess. But just on your point of the not making too many changes at once, I don't think there's any perfect way to do it, in a resale. I mean, I remember our store that we bought as a resale in Florida. I came in and kind of made changes right away, and it kind of caused some chaos, And so I think I mean, you guys kind of bought like a cruise ship, in a sense, where it's like you weren't in some like, dinky boat that you can just kind of like quickly maneuver and like change everything. It's like, I mean, that's a pretty sizable operation. And
Yeah.
so, hindsight being 2020, it's like, okay, maybe you make bigger changes, but it could have created a lot of chaos actually. And then, the worst thing, especially in the service business, is when you don't have the labor. Because then at that point, it's like you could be great at going out selling jobs, but if you're too far out on when you can produce the job, then someone's like, I don't know, let me call another competitor, see if someone has quicker availability, and it makes it tough. So, like
Yeah.
not having a mass exodus potentially, might have been a good thing, but I guess,
Yeah.
the verdict will be figured out at some point, right?
Yeah.
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 Anything else that, you guys want to share just about your journey or process, or what advice that, you would give to someone who's just kind of embarking on the journey of like considering just franchising in general, and what advice you would give them?
Hmm.
I think for me, one of the biggest things is just validation.
Hmm.
Someone, I mean, I probably talked to, I don't know, 15 to 20 franchises in total, like talking with the person selling the franchise, like it's franchise developers, what they would be called, I think. Um, and everything sounds so compelling. I mean, it's their job to make it sound compelling. The FDD is written to sound compelling, But really, we got all of our clarity from those validation calls. Like, that's where you really know. And you'd be surprised how honest people are willing to get. Like, I know for CertaPro specifically, we did 17 validation calls. And I mean, after I think 10 calls, we already kind of knew that we wanted to move forward. But at that point, it was just kind of fun, like Dean was saying. Like, I tried to see, and like I had a whole spreadsheet of notes, like where this person's from, what's the size of their business, who the most important role in their business is, and what their pros and cons are, and whether they would do it over again.
Yeah.
And it's so useful to have that information. So I will recommend, if anyone's doing the validation calls, keep a spreadsheet. Even if it's a franchise you don't end up moving forward with, I still open up my spreadsheet, and it's kind of juicy to look back and see, what did that person say about that.
Yeah.
But I think that that's really what will give you clarity, because it's like I said, in the franchise development call, their job is to make it sound as compelling as possible. But you're really not going to know what it's like until you can actually have calls with franchisees that have done it recently, who have been in it for a long time, and they can give you their true experience. And like I said, you'd be surprised how much they're willing to share on a phone call.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, that was another takeaway I got from the program, knowing that at the bottom of the FDD, everyone's contact info is there. I didn't learn that until I got to you guys. So that was huge for us, because at CertaPro, thankfully CertaPro, they were actually really forthcoming about, like, they actually told me during the development call, oh, just so you know, you can contact anyone on the bottom of the FDD, but you specifically want people who have done resales recently. You want people who are top performers. You want people who have been in the business for 10 years. Here's a good mix of all those people. And they gave me the contact info. But I had other franchises I was looking at, and they specifically only wanted us to talk to these 3 top performers, who I'm sure were given a brief before the call of what to say, what not to say. So I think it's really important for everyone to do their validation, and that's where you're really going to get your answer.
Yeah. And then don't be afraid to ask those like intense questions. I don't know how everyone feels about it. I mean, at times it feels very uncomfortable, but I mean, Liz left it to me. I asked all the tough questions, but I asked these guys, like, how much money do you make, and what's your bottom line, and all that stuff, right? And a lot of them are like more than happy to share. If someone is, I don't think anyone said no, but
I know that's what. Yeah,
but
that was kind of surprising.
I mean, we became friends with pretty much everyone we spoke to, and then most of our conversations were going on for an hour, and we actually were like, oh shoot, we gotta probably get off the call, but we gained so much from that I can't stress it enough. Just like Liz said, it's like, you have to do that if you're going to invest your life savings. There's a lot of crappy businesses out there, like you said. And when we went with CertaPro, we felt good about it. There was no surprises about who we were working with. And I think that's really important. You don't want to be like blindsided by something. So the culture, is it profitable? Is it going the direction you want to go? Does it provide the same life that you want? All that stuff. And you got to talk to people who are doing it.
Yeah.
So I agree with Liz. I think that's huge.
Yeah, if validation. Yeah, that's such a great piece of advice. And we are, it's interesting because it's like we we give the tools to people to like kill the deal. Essentially, it's like it's the antithesis of what kind of most kind of like franchise brokerage sales processes are. It's like go as fast, get them to go through as fast as possible. Cherry pick some names, but like we encourage that. There was a stretch for a while on the calls where I would tell everyone, don't waste your time. Get to franchisee validation as quick as you can, because that's where the rubber hits the road. And so, people who drag it out for 2 months before they get to validation, it's like you just wasted 2 months,
Yeah.
because you can have a couple calls and you're like, oh yeah, no, this isn't going to be good because no one's
Right.
happy and no one's making money.
Right.
So
yeah, and I totally get where people are coming from, especially being on the introverted side of, like, it's kind of awkward to pick up the phone and call someone and start asking them questions about their business. But my advice would be just start with the first phone call, go off the module and use some of those sample questions. It could be 2 simple questions. Just make a call, see what kind of vibe you're getting, and take some notes, and then move forward if you're still interested, or shut it down if you're not getting the answers you want. So I think that's huge.
Yeah, this might sound harsh, but it's like, if you're not willing to do that, I don't know if you're ready to jump into business ownership.
Well,
you got to be able to do that kind of stuff. You know, you got to be uncomfortable
yeah.
and make those phone calls.
But honestly, that's like your life savings on the line
Yeah.
too. Like I can't imagine signing a franchise agreement without doing validation. Because like I said, it's their job to make it sound juicy to you. So
And we heard them all. There's some good pitches out there, but
and then and then also it should be a red flag. There were some franchise developers that were like weird about us doing validation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like they don't want you to do too much.
This was a different one that Dean was looking at like a while ago before we found you guys, but the guy was like really weird about Dean reaching out to anyone.
I took it upon myself and I was just calling people because he only gave me a couple. And I guess it got back to him and he was like, you can't do that.
Like you guys need to be approved before you can start contacting people. And I was like,
and it's
just, okay, this isn't sending a good message of what it's like to work with you guys, one. And two, it sounds like you're trying to hide something or influence us in a certain way. So I get that there's a process to it, but it definitely was a turn off and gave us clarity to not go that
didn't
direction.
Stop me though. Like I still had those calls. Like you gotta have the calls. Like I don't care how much they're trying to block me. Like that's my point is like, even if it's, you know, whatever it takes, just make sure you get to hear from those people because it's important. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, our guidance is at minimum 5 to 10. For a while, it was 3. For way back in the day, it was 3 to 5. And then what we just started realizing is you have to talk to more, on both sides, because sometimes we would have people where they may just catch 2 people who are having a bad day.
Yeah,
and they're like, I had 2 really bad calls. And we will know based on the brand that it generally validates pretty well. Like there's a good majority of franchisees doing well. So we're like, maybe you should keep calling because we know there's some people doing well in there. But yeah, you really need to do 5 to 10. And you guys even said after the 10th one, you had a pretty clear idea of like, hey, we wanted to do this. So
yeah, and I'll say too, it's also important if you got to find relevant business owners because like, so we're in California.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but like California's model is like different than the entire country. So we're literally on our own island.
We're the only, so
because we're in
CertaPro is an employee model in California because we have to be with labor laws here versus the rest of North America is on a subcontractor model. So
that means
it's really important for us specifically to do our due diligence with that and talk to people who are successful at the employee model and the ones who are struggling with it to understand what we're walking into.
Yeah, because if you listen to somebody in like, I don't know, Florida, Virginia or something, they have a totally different business. So like we called every California person we can get on the phone. And that's really where we spend most of our energy of like, let's learn about what we're going to get ourselves into and not just like what's across the country.
Yep.
Which was very different. I mean, the calls were different for sure, but
yeah, good takeaways from both, but definitely like more relevant in California.
Yeah.
Yeah, super smart move, and ultimately all that just leads to like you said before, like a feeling of confidence. Even if it's like the confidence is like, no, this isn't the right fit, but like at least you feel good and educated about the decision you're making, and I think ultimately that's really the most important thing, and then you kind of deal with the consequences from there, however that plays out, because like you said, business is hard. At the end of the day, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but I mean, that's why not many people are business owners and successful ones. So
that's right.
Cool, guys. Well, thanks for making time. I appreciate it. I know that you guys are super busy and slammed, so I think it's going to be really helpful for folks just to hear your story and your journey and kind of hear themselves through it. Yeah, I think it'll help a lot of people. So
awesome.
And keep me updated on everything that happens in the business.
You will. Yeah, we're always here to help. So
yeah,
keep in touch for sure.
Yeah. And thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Hey, before we go, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't already. And the biggest thank you that you could ever give me is to share this episode with someone who you think will benefit. That means that we can share this message with more people and hopefully positively inspire them like we have you. So thank you. And until next time, go build your empire.